sat in the stiff, uncomfortable leather guest chair across from Darian, the man I had made millions for over the last 6 years, and watched him slide a single, crisp sheet of paper across the glass surface of his desk. It made a dry, scratching sound that seemed to echo in the silent, sterile office, louder than any shout could have been. It wasn't a bonus check, and it certainly wasn't a thank you note for the record-breaking quarter we had just finished. It was a termination letter, effective in exactly 2 weeks. My stomach twisted into a tight, cold knot, but I forced my face to remain completely blank, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. "We're pivoting to a more automated approach, Romilly," Darian said, checking his expensive watch as if he had somewhere much more important to be than firing his top performer. "The board feels your methods are a bit antiquated. We need speed. We need tech. We need the future. But to get your full severance package, there is a condition. You need to train Leif. He starts on Monday. Teach him everything you know." My blood ran cold. I looked toward the doorway where Leif was already standing. He was leaning against the frame, smirking like a cat that had just found an open window into a birdcage. He looked young, arrogant, and entirely too confident for someone who had never stepped foot in this building before. "Don't worry," Leif said, pushing off the doorframe and walking in without an invitation. "I learn fast. I'll probably upgrade your entire workflow by Friday." I forced a smile, though it felt like it might crack my face into a million pieces. "I'll teach you exactly how this place works." My name is Romilly, and for the last 6 years I haven't just sold products, I have sold trust. To understand why this firing was such a violent betrayal, you have to understand where we started. Flashback to 2018. This company was nothing but a rented room, a wobbly table, and a laptop that overheated if you looked at it wrong. I built the crown jewel client list by hand, brick by brick, phone call by phone call. I didn't do it with algorithms or mass emails. I flew to weddings in the middle of nowhere to shake hands with a CEO's mother. I remembered the names of clients' children, their allergies, and their favorite sports teams. I handled crises at 3 a.m. when the servers crashed and everyone else was asleep. My job wasn't data entry, it was empathy. It was high-touch client relations. Darian never understood this. He was a numbers guy who looked at a spreadsheet and saw the world. When he looked at my expense reports for client dinners, he saw waste. He saw unnecessary spending. I saw loyalty. I saw the reason why our retention rate was 99%. As I drove home that night after the meeting, the streetlights blurring through my tears, I thought about all the weekends I sacrificed. I thought about the holidays I missed. I had built the foundation that Darian was standing on, and now he was kicking the ladder out from under me because he thought a computer program could replace a handshake. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. Leif arrived on Monday morning like a storm of arrogance and cheap cologne. He was Darian's college buddy, a guy who had apparently failed at 3 different startups but still walked around like he owned Silicon Valley. He walked into my office wearing a $500 hoodie and holding a green juice that smelled like lawn clippings. He didn't say good morning. Instead, he immediately insulted my desk setup. "You still use a physical phone?" He laughed, picking up the receiver and looking at it like it was a fossil from the Stone Age. "Romilly, everything should be email or AI-generated text. It's 2024. Voice calls are dead. Nobody wants to talk anymore. It's intrusive." I took a deep breath, gripping my coffee mug to keep my hands steady. "Our clients like to hear a human voice, Leif. It reassures them. It builds a connection." He waved his hand dismissively, sitting in my guest chair and putting his feet up on my desk, knocking over a stack of files. "That's just inefficient. You're creating bottlenecks. My goal is to automate 80% of your day so we don't need to pay for all this overhead." He gestured vaguely at me, implying that I was the overhead. I realized then that this wasn't going to be a normal training period. Leif didn't want to learn my job. He wanted to destroy it. He wanted to strip it down to code and metrics. He viewed my relationships, the people I cared about, as inefficient bottlenecks. He didn't want my wisdom. He wanted my seat, but he wanted to change the shape of the chair into something unusable. I went home that evening and cried for an hour. It felt like grieving a death. I lay on my couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had done wrong. But then, The sadness turned into something hot and sharp. I got angry. I pulled out my employment contract and the severance agreement Darian had shoved at me. I read the fine print 3 times, highlighting the paragraphs with a yellow marker. The clause was specific. Employee must provide comprehensive training on company protocol and official policy. I sat back and stared at the paper. It did not say I had to teach him the unwritten rules that actually kept the clients happy. It didn't say I had to teach him the soft skills, the favors, or the personal touches. It said I had to teach him official policy. A wicked idea formed in my mind. I decided right then and there. I wouldn't teach him how I do the job. I would teach him how Darian thinks the job should be done. I would teach him strictly by the soulless, outdated employee handbook that Darian wrote 5 years ago, the one that sits on a shelf collecting dust, because everyone knows it's impossible to follow if you want to actually make money. I wasn't going to sabotage him with lies. I was going to sabotage him with the truth. Training day 1 began with a lesson on our most important asset. Leif sat in my chair, feet up on the desk, scrolling through his phone while I stood next to the whiteboard. He asked how I handle Lennox. Lennox is our biggest client, a manufacturing giant worth 40% of our annual revenue. He is an old-school gentleman who hates technology. He loves a 10-minute phone call to talk about business and baseball. "So, what's the deal with this Lennox guy?" Leif asked, barely looking up. "Does he prefer Slack or Teams? I can set up a channel for him." I reached into my bottom drawer and pulled out the thick, dust-covered binder labeled Company Operations Manual. I thumped it down on the desk, creating a small cloud of dust. "Darian's policy, right here on page 12, I said, pointing to a highlighted paragraph. "Written communication is legally safer and preferred for all high-value interactions. To protect the company liability, you should never call Lennox. Email only. That way, everything is documented." Leif nodded eagerly, eyes lighting up. "Finally, someone with sense. Calling is for dinosaurs. I hate being stuck on the phone listening to old war stories. I'll set up a template." "Make sure it's formal," I added, keeping my voice serious. "Darian insists on professional distance. No small talk, just business." "Done," Leif said. "Lennox is going to love the new efficiency." The next day, we moved on to pricing contracts. This was the most delicate part of my job. I usually handle the renewal contracts for our legacy clients personally. Over the years, I have always given them a loyalty discount. I hide it in the margins, adjusting labor costs or waiving certain administrative fees to keep the total price down. It keeps them happy, and they never look at competitors. It's the secret sauce of our retention. I opened the billing software on the screen. Leif leaned in, smelling of expensive cologne. "Why is this number so low?" he asked, pointing to a renewal draft I had been working on. I deleted the draft right in front of him. I opened a different file, the official rate sheet. This was the document Darian created in a boardroom, filled with inflated market prices he dreamed of getting, but never could because the market wouldn't bear it. "That was a mistake," I lied smoothly. "This is the official pricing structure. Never offer discounts. The handbook says discounts devalue the brand. It shows weakness." Leif typed this furiously into his notes on his tablet. "Got it. No mercy. We squeeze them dry. Darian is going to love seeing these profit margins go up." "Exactly," I said. "Maximize the revenue per unit. That's the goal. Treat them like numbers, not people." By Wednesday, Leif was complaining about the volume of emails coming in. "How do you reply to all these people asking stupid questions?" he groaned, spinning in the chair. "It takes forever. Do you really type these out?" "Well," I said, pausing for effect, "I usually type them out personally to ensure the tone is right, but—" "But what?" Leif snapped. "There has to be a faster way." "Darian prefers us to use this new AI tool for consistent branding," I said. "The company bought a beta license for a program called CorpSpeak last year. We don't use it often because it's new, but policy says we should." I didn't tell him we didn't use it because it sounded like a deranged robot that had swallowed a dictionary. I pointed him toward the software icon buried deep on the desktop. "Set it up," I suggested. It can auto-respond to urgent client complaints. I watched Leif set up an autoresponder for the urgent help inbox. He set the tone to professional cheerleading. The preview message popped up. "Thank you for your feedback. We value your synergy and look forward to circle backing on this issue." It was a ticking time bomb, and Leif had just lit the fuse. "This is genius," he muttered. "I can go to lunch while this thing does my job." On Thursday, we had a mock meeting. I needed to teach Leif how to handle a live negotiation, just in case he ever actually spoke to a human. In our industry, listening is power. You let the client talk, you validate them, and then you solve the problem. But that's not what Darian's handbook says. Darian's handbook talks about commanding the room and assertive posture. "Leif," I said, putting on my serious face, "in this company, silence is viewed as weakness. If a client stops talking or if they interrupt you, you need to talk louder. You need to steer the ship. Show them you're the expert. Darian loves assertive leadership." Leif puffed out his chest, adjusting his hoodie. "Dominance, I like that. I read a blog about alpha negotiation tactics. Never let them see you bleed, right?" "Exactly," I said. "If they question a price, you double down. Tell them it's the industry standard. Make them feel lucky to work with us. Do not apologize. Apologies are admissions of guilt." "I can do that," Leif said, practicing his stern face in the reflection of the monitor. "I'm going to crush these meetings." I am not stupid. I knew that eventually this house of cards would collapse, and when it did, Darian would try to blame me. He would say I sabotaged the transition. He would sue me to get his money back. So I needed an insurance policy. I created a document titled Training Log. It looked very official, with the company logo at the top. Every time I gave Leif a piece of terrible advice based on Darian's handbook, I wrote it down. Item 4. Instructed trainee on official rate sheet utilization. No discounts. Item 5. Instructed trainee on CorpSpeak, AI implementation for efficiency. Item 6. Instructed trainee on written-only, communication policy for key accounts. At the end of every day, I slid the clipboard over to Leif. "I just want to make sure you get credit for mastering the policy, Leif," I said sweetly. "Darian wants to see that you're up to speed." Leif signed every single page with a flourish, barely reading the text. He thought it was just a formality to get his access codes. I was literally collecting receipts of his incompetence, signed and dated by the man himself. Friday came, and it was time for the rehearsal. Leif had his first solo call with a mid-tier client, a logistics manager named Bob who had been with us for 3 years. I sat in the corner, shadowing him on mute, my notebook closed. The call began. Bob started to explain a problem he was having with a delivery schedule. Leif interrupted him 10 seconds in. "Bob, let me stop you there. The schedule is automated. It works. You just need to check the portal." Bob tried to speak. "Yes, but the portal doesn't show." "Bob, listen," Leif spoke louder, channeling his inner alpha. "The price for the manual override is $2,000. That's the rate. Take it or leave it. We are very busy over here." There was a long silence on the line. Then Bob hung up. The dial tone hummed in the room, a flat, dead sound. Leif turned to me, looking triumphant. "That guy was toxic. He was wasting my time. We don't need clients who don't understand the tech." Just then, Darian walked by. "How's it going?" "Cleaning house," Leif high-fived Darian. "Getting rid of the dead weight." "Good work," Darian said, beaming at me. "See, Romilly, efficiency." They were celebrating their own funeral. My final day arrived quicker than I expected. The 2 weeks had flown by in a blur of malicious compliance. I spent the morning packing my personal belongings into a small cardboard box. I took my plants, my awards, and my Rolodex. I sat at my desk and meticulously wiped my personal cell phone number from every client file. I deleted my contact card from the shared drive. I left only the office main line, the line that rang at the front desk where Junia sat, overwhelmed and underpaid. Nobody ever answered that line. It just went to a voicemail that hadn't been checked in 3 years. At 4:00 p.m., I walked into Darian's office to drop off my badge. He didn't even stand up to shake my hand. He was typing an email, likely about his next vacation. "Thanks for the handover, Romilly," he said without looking up. "Leif tells me he's already optimized your workflow by 30%. He says you were doing a lot of manual entry." I smiled, a genuine, terrifying smile that he didn't see. "He certainly has optimized it, Darian. I think you'll see the results very soon." "Good luck," he muttered. "You too," I said. "You're going to need it." I walked out of the building and felt the fresh air hit my face. It tasted like freedom. As soon as I got to my car, I blocked Darian and Leif on my phone, email, and LinkedIn. I didn't want to hear the initial confusion. I wanted to be gone when the explosion happened. I had booked a cabin up north for 3 days. It was in a valley with absolutely no cell reception. I needed to be unreachable. This wasn't just about avoiding conflict, it was strategic. When things went wrong, and they would, I needed to be completely absent so that Leif couldn't ask for help. He had to own his decisions. The high stakes here weren't about my severance money anymore. That was already deposited. This was about my reputation. I needed the world, and specifically the industry, to see that I was the magic. I needed them to realize that the company was just a shell, and I was the ghost that made it dance. I drove north, watching the city fade in my rearview mirror, ready to let the fire burn. While I was sitting on a dock fishing at the lake, blissfully unaware, the first domino fell. It started on Tuesday morning. The autoresponder I had told Leif to use, the one powered by the Beta AI, hit a critical snag. A client from a medical supply company emailed the urgent inbox. They had a shipping delay that was going to ruin a product launch worth millions. They needed a human to call the warehouse immediately. Instead, Leif's AI replied instantly. "We are excited about your journey. Check our FAQ for shipping tips. We value your synergy. Have a blessed day." The client was furious. They took a screenshot of the email exchange, the desperate plea for help followed by the tone-deaf robot response. They posted it on LinkedIn with the caption, "Is this a joke? Is this how treats long-term partners? Business fail." The post started to gain traction. Likes and comments poured in from other frustrated professionals. But in the cabin, the only sound I heard was the wind in the trees and the gentle lapping of the water. The Lennox incident happened on Wednesday. This was the big one, the nuclear option. Lennox's massive contract was officially up for renewal. In the past, I would have taken Lennox to a steak dinner. We would have shaken hands, and I would have slid the contract across the table with the loyalty discount already applied. We would have talked about his grandkids. Leif did what I taught him. He followed the handbook. He sent Lennox an email. It was a cold, generic PDF attachment, no personalized note, no subject line other than contract renewal. Inside the PDF, the price was set to the official rate, a 40% price hike compared to what Lennox was used to paying. There was no phone call, no "how are the grandkids?" Lennox is a man who values respect above all else. He looked at the email. He looked at the price. He saw it as a personal insult. He saw it as the company telling him he didn't matter. He saw it as a betrayal. I returned from the cabin on Thursday evening. I felt refreshed, calm, and ready to face the world. I plugged my phone into the charger and turned it on. The device nearly vibrated off the table. 47 missed calls, 12 voicemails, hundreds of texts. Most of the calls were from the office main line. Some were from Darian's personal number. A few were from numbers I didn't recognize. I scrolled to the texts. There was one from Junia, the receptionist who had always liked me because I remembered her birthday. "Junia, OMG Romilly, where are you? Lennox just fired us. He sent a termination letter. Darian is throwing chairs in the conference room. Leif is hiding in the bathroom. It's a war zone." I read it twice. Lennox fired us. The 40% revenue chunk was gone. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It was done. The system had collapsed. I didn't respond to Darian's calls. An hour later, an email popped up on my laptop. It was a legal threat, drafted by Darian himself. Subject: immediate action required breach of contract. Romilly, you sabotaged the training. You taught Leif to insult our clients. We have lost the Lennox account. I am revoking your severance and filing a lawsuit for damages. You acted with malice. Contact me immediately or police will be involved. He was panicking. He was flailing. He knew he couldn't actually sue me for following his own rules, but he was trying to bully me into fixing it. He claimed I acted with malice, but I knew I had acted with compliance. I decided it was time to end this. I replied with 3 words, "I'll come in." I agreed to come in on Friday morning, not to apologize, but to clarify the situation. I wore my best suit. I walked into the building with my head held high. The atmosphere in the office was funereal. People were whispering in cubicles. Junia gave me a wide-eyed look of terror and respect as I passed her desk. I walked into the boardroom. Darian looked manic. His tie was crooked, and he looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. Leif was sitting at the far end of the table, looking pale and small. He wasn't wearing his hoodie anymore. He was wearing a wrinkled dress shirt that was too big for him. "You told him to treat Lennox like a stranger," Darian screamed before I even sat down. "You told him to price gouge our best client. You destroyed this company." "I did no such thing," I said calmly, taking a seat and crossing my legs. "I trained him." "You trained him to fail." Darian slammed his hand on the table. I calmly placed my bag on the table and unzipped it. The sound was loud in the quiet room. I pulled out 2 items. First, the stack of training logs, signed and dated by Leif. Second, Darian's own corporate policy handbook from 2019, the binder still dusty. I opened the handbook to the marked pages. "Page 42, I read aloud. "All renewals must be submitted via written official correspondence to ensure legal audit trails." I taught Leif to follow this. I flipped to another page. Page 15. "Strict adherence to rate cards is mandatory to maintain brand value." I taught Leif to use the rate sheet. I looked Darian dead in the eye. "I didn't teach him my way, Darian. I taught him your way. I taught him the policy you wrote and insisted we follow." Darian opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked at the handbook, as if it were a bomb he had built himself. Darian was stunned. He was trapped. He couldn't admit his own policy was trash without admitting he was a bad leader. He couldn't fire me because I was already gone. But then Leif tried to save himself. He sat up straighter. "She told me to be aggressive," Leif shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She said it was alpha. She said we had to dominate the clients. She twisted the policy." I smiled. "I thought you might say that." I reached into my bag again and pulled out a small USB drive. "I recorded our training sessions for quality assurance," I said. "Since I was technically a consultant during the severance period, I wanted to be thorough. Here is the audio file from Tuesday where Leif says, and I quote, 'Old people like Lennox need to be told what to do. They are dinosaurs. We don't need their permission.'" Leif's face went white. Darian looked at Leif with pure murder in his eyes. The room fell into a deadly silence. I didn't leak the audio myself. I didn't have to. I simply left the USB drive on the table when I walked out. However, Junia, who had been in the room bringing coffee during the meeting, had heard everything. She had been treated poorly by Darian for years. She quit that afternoon. That night, an anonymous account posted the audio clip of Leif insulting Lennox on a popular industry forum. It was titled, "How Darian Tech Treats Its Legacy Clients." It went viral instantly. The voice was clear. The arrogance was undeniable. It was the perfect storm of corporate incompetence. The internet loves a villain, and Leif was the perfect villain. The comments section was a bloodbath. It wasn't just Lennox. The other clients saw the leak. They heard the recording. They saw the LinkedIn post about the AI autoresponder. They realized this new automated direction Darian had bragged about in his newsletter was just code for, "We don't care about you anymore." 3 major accounts canceled their contracts within 24 hours. They cited loss of confidence in management. The stock value of the company, which was private but valued by investors, plummeted. Investors started calling for an emergency audit. Darian was fighting fires on every front, but he had no water. He had fired the only person who knew how to work the hose. I was sitting at home on Saturday morning, drinking coffee and watching the fire burn from a safe distance. My phone rang. It was Lennox. I hesitated, then picked up. "Hello, Mr. Lennox." "Romilly," his voice was gruff, like grinding stones. "I heard you left. I heard the recording on the internet. My grandson played it for me. I assume that idiot Leif is the reason my emails were so sterile." "Yes, sir," I said. He was following strict company policy. Lennox chuckled. It was a dry, rasping sound. "Policy? Right. Listen, Romilly, I'm starting my own distribution network. I'm tired of dealing with middlemen who don't know how to pick up a phone. I need a director of relations. I don't want a contract, I want a partner." My heart soared. "I'm listening." Darian found out Lennox was hearing me. Word travels fast in our industry. He called me on Sunday night. He sounded desperate, broken. "Romilly, please," he said. "Come back, I'll fire Leif. I'll fire him right now. I'll give you a raise. 10%. No, 15%. He was begging. He realized that without me, he had an empty building and a rule book that didn't work. He realized that the efficiency he wanted had efficiently destroyed his business. "It's not about the money, Darian," I said. "Name your price," he pleaded. "We can fix this. You can call Lennox, he likes you." "Lennox doesn't like the company, Darian," I corrected. "He likes me." I agreed to meet Darian one last time on Monday morning. He thought I was going to accept his offer. He had the new contract ready on his desk, signed and waiting. I walked into his office. The office was quiet. Half the desks outside were empty. "Here it is," Darian said, pushing the contract toward me. 20% raise, full autonomy, just bring Lennox back." I slid the contract back across the desk. "I'm not here to negotiate, Darian," I said softly. "I'm here to give you this." I handed him a white envelope. He opened it, confused. It was a resignation letter, but it wasn't mine. It was signed by the entire remaining account management team, 3 people I had trained years ago. "I hired them all this morning," I said. "They start with me and Lennox tomorrow." Darian stared at the paper. His jaw dropped. The final scene of this story isn't in a courtroom or a boardroom. It's in a beautiful, modern office with floor-to-ceiling windows. I am walking down the hallway with Lennox. My old team is there, laughing, working on physical phones, talking to real people. There is no AI. There are no rate sheets. There is just business getting done. Cut to Darian. He is sitting alone in his glass office. The lights are off in the hallway. The phone isn't ringing. It will never ring again. He looks at Leif, who is sitting on a couch in the lobby, playing a game on his phone, oblivious to the ruin he caused. Darian looks down at his corporate policy handbook on the desk. He picks it up and throws it into the trash can. I look at the camera one last time. People say I taught him everything wrong. No, I taught him exactly what he asked for. Be careful what you wish for, you just might get it.